My name's Martin O'Neill. I'm the head of marketing for Rosterfy for the European and North America region. Now, what we've got today is something I'm really looking forward to, and it mainly has come from the huge response that we got from the first marketing webinar that we did a few weeks back. That just really blew up, and we were so pleasantly surprised with the reception and the feedback that we got from that we thought, well, we have to do this again. And one of the bits of feedback that we got was that with the volunteer management community would like a little bit more help with the social media in particular. So I reached out to two people that I know that are brilliant at building communities and engaging with volunteers and their communities online on a range of different platforms and channels. Now, throughout this presentation, we've got this QR code that pops up. Now, we've been using, for those of you that have been on a few of our webinars this year, we've been using this as a kind of like an engagement tool, really, on the webinar to get everybody involved. So there'll be a few polls on there, and it's also the way that you could ask our two guests some questions as well. So I'm going to get straight to it. If this QR code will stay on the screen just for a little bit. So feel free to scan that and then join the conversation. I find that if you use your mobile, you've got it like a second screen almost, so you can interact as we go through. If you do happen to be fancy and have a second monitor, you can, by all means, just go on slido.com and then enter that code. So let's get through to the first slide on here. So this is the agenda today. Right, I'm going to be going through some marketing tips first of all about social media, just stuff that I've picked up on the 15-16 years or so my career. I'll try and leave it to be quick but useful, because I know that the real pull for today is an opportunity to hear from Tatum Mandy and Amy Beattie. Tatum is a social media superstar. She wouldn't describe herself as that. She's far too humble, but I love the content that Tatum has. I love the community that she is part of, contributes to, and tries to nurture. And Amy Beattie is at Silverstone. I've dropped the E off that. I'm so sorry. I've already seen a spelling mistake. Silverstone are obviously one of the world's most famous racetracks. And Amy is the volunteer manager and coordinator for them. She's got a brilliant story to tell. I've already gone through Amy's slides and I love what I saw, so I'm sure that you will too. And then there'll be plenty of time for like a Q&A at the end as well. I've got some pre-prepared questions, but if there is anything that you would like to ask these two, please enter it as a question in the app, on the scanned QR code. So today I'm going to be going quickly over what it takes to be a volunteer manager in terms of social media and marketing in 2025 and as we go into 2026, why emotional hooks are really important, how framing your mission can really help you drive your marketing, and also just a few tips from me from a more strategic point of view. So very, very quick. Look, if I was in your shoes, these are some of the things that I would quickly do. So I'm hoping by the end of this webinar, you should have a few neat tricks and strategy tips that you can take away, but then also some insight from Tatum and from Amy too. So here's the first here's the first way of me finding out whether or not the Slido scanner is working correctly. Hopefully everybody can scan that, log in. You don't really have to set up an account in any kind of way. It should just drop you straight in. But here's the first question. Did you have any marketing experience before joining your program? So this is quite telling as well. And I think this probably speaks to why the webinars that we've had and the content that we've been producing around, like, say, marketing advice, and that's just one discipline. It could be a whole host of things, and I'll get to that in a second, that volunteer managers and coordinators are having to do to build communities. But I see, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because it's my career, but I see marketing as being a core function or a core principle of what volunteer managers are doing, and this is telling. No, I had to learn the hard way, and it's very rare that most, even in large scale organizations, that they will take their volunteer coordinators and their managers to one side and say, hey, look, we're going to put you on a marketing course, or we're going to give you some training. It just doesn't happen. Yet you're expected to do a whole host of tasks that are marketing related. So envious of the 14% that are, or 9% here, that are Canva and Monday.com wizards, or just marketing tools in general. But let's go through. So very, very quickly, I know we've got some organizations on the call that are very familiar with of who Rosterfy are, but then we also have a few that aren't as well. So I'm just going to quickly explain why we're giving this talk in particular. So Rosterfy are essentially a volunteer management platform. Now we are the platform that has empowered over 150 million hours of volunteering, and we operate globally. So my responsibilities sit within Europe and North America, but we operate in Australia and the sort of APAC region as well. So 77 countries in total. You'll find events all the way from Emma Pete and Formula E, who are doing something in Miami, all the way through to St. John's Ambulance in Australia, you know, mobilizing their volunteer teams there too. So go on to the next one. Yeah, like I said, a global workforce solution. 5 million volunteers are managed through the platform every single year on Rosterfy. We use secure AWS servers across each of these regions as well. That's really important for data hosting. If you are involved in the events or sports events sector and you're worried about, like, where is my database going to be held in, and am I going to be meeting the regional requirements for data hosting, we have that solved because of our data hosting policy globally. And what is super useful and very, very relevant at the moment is the amount of languages that Rosterfy can be translated in. We have a lot of the most commonly used languages. You'll probably find that with most platforms anyway, but ours can be found to be translated into 13 at the moment, and that's growing rapidly as well. So the offices that I work out of are in London Bridge, but we've got New York and Denver and Melbourne and Sydney, just to name a few. So and if you forgive me, this is an opportunity just to say this was a landmark that we've reached this year. We're all incredibly proud of this. Probably just tying it back to the webinar that we're on, probably a good opportunity to use a positive news story socially. You probably would have seen us broadcast this over our social channels as well. Okay, that's enough of Rosterfy, but now on to social media. So I have a question, or it's more of like it's like a word cloud, I suppose, or just your thoughts on what's the purpose of your social media channel for your volunteer program. So it's quite an important question, really, to kick it off, because I guess it sort of dictates, like, how important is social media for your particular program, and is this even talked about? Is there a defined purpose for your channel, or is it more like we feel like we should be on all the social media channels, so we are? So we've got some, yeah. See, it's interesting, and thank you for the very honest unknown there in the middle. I think that is something I'm seeing quite a lot as well, is that maybe there isn't like a specific strategic need for it, but recruitment is jumping out big time, and that's really good, because we've got a couple of slides coming up very, very soon that address exactly that issue. But there's a broad range that's popping up here. Most of it seems to be about community building, right? It's about engaging, retaining, rewarding, bringing people back into the program. But it's a truly essential tool, I think, for volunteer programs. And yeah, thank you very much for adding your feedback to that. We've still got a few more people typing in there. I'm loving making friends, by the way. That's really, really sweet. That's a good one. Cool. Okay, I'm going to move on. So what is a volunteer manager in 2025? If you'd asked me that, I've been at Rosterfy now for about 4 years. If you'd asked me that about 4 years ago, I would have a set view. I would say, okay, we've got an organization here that has a number of volunteers. We need to mobilize them. I need to make sure they arrive at the right place at the right time with all the training, all the kit, and all the need to know information delivered to them. And that feels like a neat rounding up of that. But actually, the longer that I've worked in the sector and across all sectors, non-profits and sports, I'm realizing that the volunteer management teams are expected to do so much. And a lot of it is marketing related as well. You're expected to be a champion of the brand, and you're expected also to be a campaign manager superstar, able to promote events, share success, and drive up demand for the program, all while telling a story and then reporting on that story as well. To me, this reads a hell of a lot like a brand manager or a campaign manager in marketing. And if we just go back to the first thing that I asked you to do, over 80% of you said that you had no sort of formal training or experience in marketing going into this. So you're under, I think, a lot of pressure to be really good at skills you're expected to learn on the job. And then also there's event management as well. So this is a key element for a lot of you that are on the call. But again, a lot of this is actually marketing related as well. If I think about my own role, you know, this year at Rosterfy, we put on about 4 or 5 specific events that we hosted ourselves. So we went to Glasgow, Bristol, we had a couple in London, and a lot of that is, you know, driving up interest and finding people who are keen to, you know, engage with the topic, finding speakers, organizing with the venue, organizing catering, and all those issues that come up with that. And that's very much a marketing function, but volunteer management teams are expected to do that too. So here's a question for the group here. How do you recruit most of your volunteers? So what out of these, and I've been very specific with breaking these into as short as I can, because I appreciate it could be quite a long list here, but from a recent survey that we did, we found that a lot of people were recruiting through any one of these channels here. Now, with this particular poll, I'll show you the results when I click on to the next slide. I'm just going to wait for a couple more people to do this. I didn't want anybody to be overly influenced, I think, by the results, but there we go. So recruitment is a major concern for a lot of volunteer programs, and social media seems to be a key driver for recruitment. Now, word of mouth is up there, which I find really interesting, and I'll get to in just a second, just seeing if there's any last few. Yeah, 42% saying, so it is really key to your role, but just keep an eye on that 21% there for word of mouth. So those of you that might be aware of this, we did a national survey of volunteer managers across the UK. This went out to hundreds and hundreds of volunteer managers, and we got over, I think it was around about 400 people completed the survey, so it gave us a really good cross section of the sector. And we asked, what we were able to do is split them into 2 groups. We asked, do you find recruitment easy or do you find recruitment difficult? We then took each of those sort of groups of people and then asked them how they operate. And one of the questions that we asked was, which channel do you find most effective for recruiting volunteers? So if you said that word of mouth was the sort of main channel, the chances are you find recruitment difficult. Whereas if you'd said that website or maybe social media, it's a little bit easier. It's never easy, we know that, and even the most popular of programs, you know, we've got Amy coming up from Silverstone very shortly, and who wouldn't want to be a volunteer for the, you know, the British Grand Prix or something like that. They get inundated with requests. But for a lot of organizations, volunteer management and volunteer recruitment is very challenging. What this says to me is that if you have a strategy that's built around digital, that you understand that you're driving people to your website, so you can kind of interlink social media and website, because if you're doing the social media effectively, you should essentially be driving people to engage with the content in your landing pages on your website. So you could almost merge those two. Those that find it easier are able to make that journey more often. When we asked that same group of people, who do you find the most difficult to, like, what demographic do you find the most difficult to recruit? We found that most of the time it's younger than 30, sort of like your Gen Z. Now I know that social media trends change all the time, and people, especially younger generations, migrate to different platforms very, very frequently. Yesterday's Facebook users are probably today's TikTok. And now I'm reliably informed by the younger generation that they're actually going back to Facebook now. So it moves all the time. But one of the big challenges for a lot of volunteer managers and programs, particularly around recruitment, is Gen Z. So having a digital strategy is almost essential. You cannot run effective volunteer program next year on just word of mouth. A digital strategy is going to be vital. So keeping up with these trends within social media and using the channels as effectively as possible by understanding what's best for that particular channel, and I'll get to that in a moment, is going to really help you cut through to this younger audience who have an appetite for content, like doom scrolling as they call it. They just flick through reels and content all the time. Being part of their world for that short period of time will really help you engage with that particular group. So that was just 2 insights from a great document that has a lot more insight about general trends within volunteer management. I just wanted to pull those 2 in particular out because they're relevant for what we're going through today. But if you are interested in seeing what that full report looks like, please just click on the QR code, another QR code, I'm so sorry, but perhaps afterwards you might want to just go on our website and look at white papers, like on the header, and you'll see it. It'll pop straight up. I promise you I won't be any other QR codes for at least the next 10 minutes. So you've all mentioned that volunteer recruitment is a real issue. I've got a little sentence here that I like to use in a lot of presentations, which is volunteer recruitment isn't just about asking for help, it's about telling a story, and particularly a story that people want to be part of. When I say that, what I mean is that every opportunity you have to talk about your mission, whether that is on social media or perhaps a blog post or the emails that you send out, you've got this opportunity to talk about your mission, and it's very important that it's consistent all the way through to each channel as well, and that you're not don't feel like because you're using different channels, I'm using blog, I'm using email, I'm using social media, that you need to present something completely differently. Just a consistent message that ties to the heart of what your mission is about is really effective. Now, I'm about to show you why it's effective and for which organizations that I've been noticing are leveraging this really, really well. It's really important to tell a story. But before I do that, I'm interested in knowing who creates your content. Now, this will make sense why I'm asking this question in the follow-up very, very soon. But so within your organization, who is expected to make your content? Is it the volunteer management team? Is it the social media team? Are you lucky enough to have a marketing team? Or is it no one and you're looking to start this, or a mixture of all? So I'm just going to give that just a second or two. And one observation I'm going to make while this is coming in is that in my opinion, the most effective route to content currently has 0% on here, which is volunteers create their own content, user generating content. I'll tell you why while people are filling out the rest of this. I had a chat with Emma Peet from Formula E in part 1 of this marketing webinar series, and Emma said that they created entirely new volunteer roles at Formula E specifically from the user generated content that was created by their volunteers without asking them to. The younger volunteers that they had were all on TikTok, and they were producing videos at the events, and then using that, using Rosterfy, they realized on the reporting end, on the back end, they found that the most effective recruitment channel for their program, according to Rosterfy, was TikTok. And Emma said, we're not on TikTok. You won't find a Formula E TikTok account. So how did that happen? And that's what they found out, that volunteers themselves, without asking, were going out and creating the content for them. And that was driving recruitment. So I appreciate it's not going to be effective for absolutely every volunteer program. And some things will have a little bit of a niche where maybe user generated content isn't appropriate or right, but have a think about it, because if it is essentially something that you could leverage, you could benefit in the same way that Emma and Formula E did too. And even to the point now that if you wanted to volunteer at an upcoming Formula E event, one of the roles that are available is I think it's called a content champion, and that's that role, is that they're volunteers, but on the day they're there to build a kind of library really, and record what's actually happened at the event in order for them to leverage it for volunteer recruitment. So an all-in approach is really, really nice to see. Got volunteers involved in that too, which is excellent. Perhaps there's some user generated content specifically coming through there as well. So why it's important to use volunteers as well is because there is no hiding that they show actually the hook and the emotion of why people are volunteering. So I love these three particular organizations. One of the things that I love about them is that they are very consistent with the emotional hook that they use. Cancer Research UK, it won't take you long to flick through a lot of their social posts. Doesn't matter what channel they're using, they use a lot of empathy driven related posts. Guide Dogs, who we had on our last marketing webinar, the lovely social media team that was on that call, they had some great advice to share too. But they use a lot of admiration and bigging up the people that are their volunteers, or the I guess the people that are working with the guide dogs themselves. That's a really interesting hook for me, because there's a little bit of a pride element in there too, which I really like. And then South by Southwest, they're global, but we have they're part of a Rosterfy customer base that's in the US. They do really cool, really trendy social media content. Again, I know this is going to be relevant to every type of organization that we've got and the people that you serve, but one thing I'm just pointing out is they know their market, they know who they're speaking to, and they know what's going to grab them. So one of the first things that I would recommend is review what is your mission, and what underlying emotional hook drives that mission, or is a key driver for that mission. And then take a moment to review your current social media output and ask yourself, does it meet that particular hook? So which of these social media channels do you use? Now I've listed probably the most commonly used social channels. I actually took this in this particular, the order that was up on the screen when we started. That's really just the footer from South by Southwest. I mean, they're over everything. But these are the key channels that they in particular use. Let's give that just a second too. Yeah, Facebook is interesting. That's seeing a bit of a resurgence coming back. Some people might think that it's always just really been there in the background, but it did fall off a little bit in replaced by Instagram and TikTok, particularly with younger volunteers, but that's kind of coming back now a little bit. I'm loving the YouTube one, by the way. That's a channel that at Rosterfy we are underserved, that channel, and it's something that we're thinking about, is how we can deliver more content via YouTube. And it's good to see that some organizations on the call, and we've got a lot on the call today, are using that channel as well. But there we go. That's interesting. The people at Meta who own both of those top two programs will be ecstatic to know that 94% use both of them. That's really good. But every channel really has a purpose. I'll show you what that might mean for you. If you were going to put together your volunteer strategy, it's a very good idea to not just put all your eggs into one channel, and understand that each of these, and there are others beyond this, but each of these has its own underlying purpose. Now, Blue Sky, for those that don't know, Blue Sky is effectively a new X or Twitter alternative. That's very good for, like, say you're running an event company and you've got a high demand. So back to Emma at Silverstone, when the volunteer opportunities for Silverstone come up, bang, they'll launch that and they'll get the influx of calls. That's great for those sort of very quick moments. Facebook is really good for recruiting and engaging. It feels like a community on there, and if managed the right way and lots of user generated content shared on there too, it can feel like that community too. I'm part of the charity softball league that they have in London, and they have a great Facebook community and Facebook community, Instagram community too. But where they use Instagram really is wow moments, like these little videos, like that South by Southwest little reel that was kicking on there. That's a perfect environment for something like that. That's short and easy to absorb. Impact reporting is really, really important, and sometimes these other channels, they might not be I don't want to use the word professional because that would sort of suggest amateur otherwise, but LinkedIn very much is a professional environment. If you're talking about impact in LinkedIn, you're not only going to attract other people to your cause, but also people to your organization as well, like other volunteer managers and people that actually work at in organizations just like you. They'll be able to see the good work that you're doing. Spotify is really good for like playlists and podcasts, sorry, and it's a really good way of humanizing the brand. I think of all the channels, we're probably going to see a lot of growth in this particular channel over the next couple of years, particularly around podcasts. Rosterfy has started sponsoring a charity. They are a new podcast that's on just charity focused podcast that's on Spotify, and that's a fast growing one at the moment. They tie it all neatly together, taking snippets from their podcast and repurposing it over to other things is a very common practice. TikTok is, like I said before, Formula E volunteers, for example, gives them a platform to present user generated content, and then YouTube to recap, train and remind people of the good work that you do. So that's probably a neat summary really for as a sort of takeaway to review how you're using each of the channels. So here's some practical advice before we move over to our guests. I would say that social media shouldn't live in its own bubble. Beyond everything else, it should have a strategic plan. So first of all, you've got to make sure that it's linked to the overall mission and be seen as not just a function that you have to carry out, but actually I call it like an accelerator or a support tool. So it's really good for ticket sales, donations, newsletter signups, and sponsorship opportunities. It's not about generating likes and growing the nice little follower number. It's really, what is the end-to-end goal that you've got? If recruitment is the goal, how do all those channels tie into driving you back to your website? Because as we saw, those that do that find it easier to recruit. And here's my quick takeaway tips, I suppose. These are just short little snappy things. Don't feel like you have to post constantly. One of the myths is that you have to be just ever present. That is a myth, and it's been completely debunked. Consistency is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you're doing it once a week or 4 times a week. As long as you stick to a rhythm, that's the thing that the algorithm picks up in all of those channels, and you're more likely to get noticed basically when you do that. There are loads of free tools out there. If you don't have the luxury of a marketing team, there's really some lovely tools out there. I use Canva all the time for branded visuals. Create templates, make sure it's consistent, and share those templates with your team so not everybody's having to recreate stuff all the time. Scheduling can be a real sort of pain, especially because of how long it takes a lot of the time particularly when you're like ramping up to an event. So try and use some of the free scheduling tools. I've used Buffer in the past. I really like it. And if you happen to be using MailChimp or another email service, look into your tool section on there, because you'll be surprised. Sometimes they've got a built-in scheduler and you didn't even know it was there. User generated content is super important. Share as much of it as you feel comfortable doing. Because if you share it, people will notice that you'll share it, and then they'll start to produce more of it. Have a clear call to action. There is no point just posting for posting's sake. Make sure it ties back to what your overall goal is. And above all else, everybody on this call has a major advantage over any sector that I've personally worked in before, and that is emotion drives the non-profit, sporting and voluntary sector. So use that, find the emotional hook that's tied to your mission, and make sure that goes through everything that you the thread of that runs through each of your channels and back to your recruitment strategy. So I'm hoping I haven't lost Tatum, and if Tatum, if you're there, if you could pop your mic on and pop your camera on. There we go. That's reassuringly popping up there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tatum. I'm a big fan of what Tatum does, an absolute superstar at building communities. And when I wanted to do a follow-up to the first webinar that we did on marketing and do something specifically around community engagement and particularly over social, Tatum was literally the first person I reached out to. So thank you very much, Tatum, for coming on the call today.
Oh, you're very welcome, and it was really cool to hear everything you had to say. Hi everyone, I'm Tatum. I work at We Are Social, so we are a social media marketing agency. Been there 6 months. Previously to that, I worked at Motorsport Network, so I managed all their social media. So think mainly F1, but a bit NASCAR, a bit Formula E, all that good stuff. So yeah, I've been in the motorsport sector for a little while now, and now I'm kind of more in the sports sector, still dabble in a bit of motorsport. Outside of this, I host events myself, mainly networking events for young people who want to work in motorsport, want to work in sport. It's very competitive, and I think I've learned transitioning into motorsport, kind of the things you need and how important networking is. And yeah, so that's kind of what I do on the side. I get people to come along to my events.
How did you get involved in motorsport in the first place, Tatum?
Yeah, so when I was very little, I used to watch F1 with my dad. So that was kind of my first introduction to motorsport, and I've always loved it. And then off the bat, out of university, I was working in a sales job I really hated. But at the same time, I'd kind of discovered LinkedIn and started using social media a bit more, but I didn't like talking about my job. I think a lot of people use LinkedIn to talk about their job, but I wasn't enjoying my job, so what else could I post? And it kind of became my platform to talk about motorsport, everything I enjoyed about it, what I thought could be different, and yeah, just a platform to share my thoughts really. And then unfortunately, I got made redundant from my sales job, but because I'd been doing all this, I guess, extra work talking about motorsport and things like that, it really was the catalyst for me getting into the motorsport industry. There was lots of other factors, but if it wasn't for social media, I would never have got my dream job in motorsport and yeah, be here where I am now.
So one of the things that people will notice very, very quickly when they look at your social content is your ability to engage with the community, and you've been very good at building not just a profile within sort of motorsport, but building like leaning into the community behind the cause, or I say cause, but motorsport is the cause in this instance. There'll be a lot of people that are on this call that are trying to build a community, so not just having a volunteer pool but making them feel part of something. You've been really successful here in developing a community behind you, or leaning into that and being part of it. What advice would you give somebody if they're not quite getting there yet, getting the community together, and what are they looking for?
Yeah, I think it's that hard balance of, informative content and then personal content. And I think we often separate that into two different things. And you might start talking about a personal story about what you did at the weekend. And then your next post might be, hey, we've got this volunteer management program, you should sign up. And I think separating that two is where people fall short. You kind of want to merge in the middle. So if I'm sharing a personal story, it's also going to link to, okay, I've got these events. So let me think of an example. So if I was hosting an event, I would talk about, okay, I know networking is super important. I really struggled with it when I first started, but events like this were really helpful for me. And then bringing that back into your story, because it's authentic. No one else has the same story as you. So I think that's a great way of explaining it. And there's always things in your personal life that are going to link back to, why are you doing what you do. And I think if you can merge those stories together, I think it really helps with the community and getting them to come into it. And I think little things you do in your content finishing with a question, making it open-ended, wanting to know people's opinions. There's such small things you can do, but people then will comment and then will get involved. You kind of have to make it rewarding for them with that information, because commenting is taking some time out of your day. Anyone can click like, but if you're going to comment, that's taking extra effort.
Yeah, and I think that the algorithm recognizes that as well. I mean, we see that posts that have got other people tagged into them and questions asked and comments tend to gain a little bit more traction than those that just have the thumbs up. So that feels like something that would drive engagement, is by opening up that conversation and getting people to comment. One of the things that I think has been a recent trend is like personal brand. So I would consider that you very much drive a personal brand, but a lot of the people that are on the call, they will be probably talking from the voice of maybe the brand themselves. So say the likes of Guide Dogs or Cancer Research UK, they'll post a lot, but under the brand element. If somebody was interested in perhaps not just doing that, but also just using their own personal brand over LinkedIn, I mean, first of all, would you recommend they do that? And secondly, what advice could they do, given that what advice would you impart on them, given that you've been very successful at driving a personal brand?
Yeah, I think my day-to-day job is working from brand accounts, and I speak from brand accounts. It's very different to see, unless you're the likes of, say, Adidas or Monzo or companies like that. Most of the time, it's individual creators that are going to get more engagement, I think, because people can feel they relate to them more on a personal level. If I'm writing a post about my company's Christmas party, for example, and the company writes one, it's probably going to sound a lot more interesting coming from me and my personal experience. And I think that one-to-one level people can relate to, and you can add in details and personal experiences that you wouldn't from the brand account. And I think you mentioned it earlier, that emotional connection. I think people come to my events because they've connected with me and we've built that community up. They could go to many other events, but they'll choose to come back to mine because they've related to something I've said or I've spoke to them personally. So 100%, I'd say speak from your own account, create that personal brand. It's gonna help your company. It's gonna help yourself. It doesn't have to be in line with corporate tone of voice, things like that. You can be your real self, even on, platforms like LinkedIn, which we call professional, but professionals are still human at the end of the day, and it's important to remember that.
How do you handle some of the more sort of negative aspects of social media? We know that they exist, because that's what the internet's like sometimes. But yeah, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons with everything. I wouldn't work in social if I didn't think the pros outweighed the cons. But I think the two biggest things, I guess, especially for me, the first one is social media fatigue. Whether you're fed up of doom scrolling or you've run out of ideas, that's a huge one. And I think having those boundaries, you don't have to post every day. You don't have to answer every message. I'm terrible answering messages. It might take me a few weeks to get back, but if that's my personal account, I can set those boundaries. I think you can also, it's your feed, you curate it. If you don't want to see someone's post, don't follow them, for example. So I think you have to set those boundaries in place. It might be, okay, after 10 o'clock, we're not going on social, for example. They're super important. I just recently took a nice hiatus from my own socials, which I think is good for creativity. And then when it comes to, I guess, the worst side of social media, whether it's hate, spam, things like that, I think if it's a genuine complaint, I think publicly acknowledge it. And then you can privately message. If someone's suggesting something you can improve, publicly acknowledge it, thank them for it. And again, how can you maybe implement this? Thinking about in the future. If I've got feedback on an event from somebody, most of the time people will say nice things, but occasionally you might have that one comment. And I think if you acknowledge it, and publicly address it, it's, you've got that sorted. You don't need to be mean, don't come back. And then if it's hate or spam, delete it. I think we're all sensible enough to know the difference and to try not to get into an argument online. But yeah, boundaries I think are the most important. I think we've got to remember that social media is separate to real life, and yeah, having those boundaries.
Now I know that you are a volunteer as well. I know that you volunteered at some sporting events and all that as well. What when you're in the sort of volunteer recruitment process and you're personally receiving content, whether that's email or social content as well, is there anything that jumps out to you that you think you quite like that from a delivery point of view, or that speaks to you personally?
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. I think user-generated content is massive. If I've seen something from a brand telling me, oh, it's really cool if you volunteer, or you'll get this out of it, like this is incredible, you believe it to some extent, but it's actually the personal posts I see that make a real difference. With Formula E, I volunteered before, so it's really cool to hear you chatted to Emma, and it was hearing from people who'd volunteered the previous year and what they got out of it that made me think, okay, I want to volunteer, I want to do this. And I made content myself afterwards about how great it was, and I had people message me like, oh, like how can I get involved? And people who are there and experiencing this, they are the best people for your content. Even if it's just a picture on LinkedIn that said, hey, I volunteered here, it was really great, or I met these wonderful people volunteering. These people are, they're your what's the word, they're your best examples and evidence of how good the program is. And even people who are marketing it themselves, if you're doing it from your personal brand, you're sharing like a picture of everyone having a great time at the event, or people getting a lot out of it, that makes a real difference and it feels real and authentic. Brands can do it, and you may trust different brands to different degrees, but I think coming from real people who've experienced it makes a big difference and will make me want to sign up again.
What channels? I know it's hard to pick a particular channel, but is there a marketing channel that you tend to sort of lean into a little bit more than others, or one that you find is effective for you?
I'm a huge LinkedIn girly, and I will back LinkedIn every day of the week. And I think I've been on LinkedIn a couple of years now, and I've kind of seen that evolution from it's just a platform to get a job to it is a fully fledged social media platform in the same way as Instagram, Facebook, for example. And I think for what I've wanted to achieve, it's been really great. It's been career-wise, it's been getting people to events which are based on career. And I think for the volunteering space as well, for a lot of people, volunteering is a great way to help their CV or help with career prospects as well. And I think LinkedIn's underrated in that way, because they're the people who are looking for it, and often we're not seeing that from people. So I think LinkedIn's a great space for that, and I think more creators are coming to LinkedIn, which is really interesting. And now we've got features such as video on LinkedIn that's more up and coming. I think it's a platform we should all be looking at more.
And just as we sort of wrap up, is there anything that you're working on We Are Social that maybe you'd like to share with the group, or is there something that potentially anybody that's on the call might want to get involved with?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult with the work I do with brands, of what we can share and what we can't. But we recently worked on a really cool project called Adidas Chasing 100. You can find the video on YouTube. Basically, Adidas had this idea that they wanted to break the 100-kilometer world record, and we kind of did all the social lead up to that. They had 5 athletes, and they had new technology. They had Valtteri Bottas involved. It was an incredible project, and our team have put together a really brilliant YouTube video if anyone's interested in watching that. So that's something recent I've done at work. That's really cool if anyone's interested. And then, next year I'll be back hosting motorsport watch parties and events. So if anyone's a F1 fan and wants to know a bit more about the space, or just have a fun time with other people who love motorsport, then you can find me on LinkedIn, Tatum Mandy, and it'd be lovely to see many of you there.
I've heard about your watch parties. I'm definitely down for one of those. It's I'm a bit of an F1 fan as well, anyway, to be honest. But they look like a great laugh, and lots of passionate people as well about F1. So it's lovely to be part of a community like that. It's great. So cool. Okay. Thank you very much, Tatum. We're going to move on to Amy, but we do have a section at the end just for like the Q&A. So like I said before, with the QR code, there is opportunities to ask Tatum some questions. I'm going to hand over to Amy. Hello, Amy.
Hi everyone, and thanks for having me this morning. But yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about our program here at Silverstone and how we motivate our volunteers to deliver the F1 British Grand Prix. So excited.
Perfect. Take it away, Amy. I'll flip through the slides if that's okay as you go through, and just give me a nudge if I'm not moving on fast enough or something like that. But a little introduction about yourself, and then we'll just go straight into that. But yeah, great.
No problem. But yeah, so I'm Amy, so I'm the volunteers manager here at Silverstone. So I've been working with volunteers for around 8 years now, in some shape or form. So I started off in student sport, then wanted to move across to events. So I worked with the Ocean Race for a while, and then been at Silverstone now for just over 1.5 years. So yeah, we look after two unique sets of volunteers. So we have our marshals that are all about track safety, and then we have our race makers that are kind of more your typical major events style of volunteers that you would see. But yeah, I've got experience of 2 British Grand Prix now. Team consists of a volunteers coordinator, Chanel, and also a volunteer assistant, Vicky, who's part of our team. But yeah, some key volunteer stats for you from our program. So we have 650 marshals, we have 700 engaged race makers, and then our fantastic team have supported us across 35 events this season. We had 500 race makers that supported the delivery of the British Grand Prix this year, and we welcomed 200 new recruits to our team. So yeah, it's a very exciting year, very busy year. Our race makers contributed over 25,000 hours across the season, which is just incredible. But yeah, so for the purpose of today's webinar, I'm just going to give you a bit of an insight into our race maker program. So the purpose of our race makers, these volunteers help turn our customers into fans and deliver a world-class event experience for us, so support with that. Not only do they support with the British Grand Prix, but they also have other opportunities to support the MotoGP, British Touring Cars, and the Runfest are just a few examples of the events that they can get involved with once on board. So our season typically runs from April through to November, and yeah, just lots of different events they can get involved with. But yeah, so the Racemaker journey started off after getting inspired from the legacy of the London 2012 Olympics programme. We started off in 2013, so the Racemaker legacy was born. We started to build a brand identity for our programme, and really creating a community of volunteers with a purpose to deliver world-class events. We did start off quite small, so we started off with 100 race makers, and then we have grown the team to 700 that it is today. So they've built up over the years an excellent reputation with our fans. They are quite well known within our community, within the motorsport community, and that in turn has then inspired others to join the program. So again, that's kind of word of mouth, but also kind of sharing their experiences on social media as well. So I guess our marketing aim is to attract passionate volunteers to our program. We want to transform them into dedicated race makers, so dedicated volunteers for our team, and then inspire them to stay for the longer term as well. We're fortunate that we've had volunteers as part of our program for over 10 years now, so we really do want to continue kind of coming back to us year after year. So in terms of understanding the motivation to join our team, as you can imagine, most of the responses are to be part of that team delivering the biggest annual sporting event in the UK, to give back to that motorsport community. And also we've got a lot of students that apply that want to gain that experience to achieve their career goals, and also networking opportunities, and kind of get that experience of behind the scenes. But I guess the kind of overarching motivation to join our team is to feel part of the community, to feel part of that team. So that's something we kind of play upon throughout the full experience of our volunteer program. So I guess, yeah, when we are going out to recruit, we really do want to kind of promote the value of joining our team. So promoting that why that Martin and Tatum kind of touched upon. So yeah, we promote those kind of intrinsic benefits of volunteering. You know, really kind of I guess drive that excitement for being part of the British Grand Prix team, and then drive kind of that opportunity to represent the home of British motorsport and give back to that community. But again, our biggest strength that we kind of get people on board through is that sense of community. So we're lucky to have passionate volunteers that kind of do that for us and kind of promote and kind of really sell that story of being what it means to be a racemaker. And yeah, so building that volunteer movement with purpose. How did we do that? So we created an identity for our program. We created logos, the branding. We have quite a distinctive uniform that's well recognised with our fans now. So our fans can spot out our volunteers in the crowds and kind of recognise what they do. We got experienced and dedicated volunteers within our team to kind of really kind of drive that sense of community and what it means to be a racemaker, and chatting to customers when they come along and kind of building up that reputation with our fans to kind of promote the program and the benefits of volunteering itself. So yeah, so when it does come to the recruitment and the onboarding phase, we mainly use digital channels. Sorry, so it's more about that social media campaign and that call to action, and driving the excitement around the British Grand Prix, promoting that event experience. But yeah, so our current team, they're brilliant at kind of telling their own stories. We had kind of a lot of user-generated content that came from this year's Grand Prix that was kind of natural. We had a lot of kind of our volunteers that were documenting their days. We built up kind of a reputation on TikTok just by our customers kind of posting what social media or posting what our racemakers get up to during the event. So that has really helped us kind of build that reputation for the program. But yeah, so throughout the recruitment journey, we use our volunteers really do help us kind of build that sense of community. They're at the forefront of the training. They help us with the interviews process as well, so that they can kind of tell their side of their volunteer experience throughout that journey. And yeah, as part of the British Grand Prix, when it actually comes to the delivery of the live event, we really want to kind of push that feeling of being a racemaker, what it's like to be part of the team. So we do that through on-site welcomes and briefings. We create WhatsApp chats. So we have various teams within the racemaker community throughout the Grand Prix. So our team leaders will lead those WhatsApp chats to make sure that everyone feels supported and kind of creating that excitement around coming to the event. But yeah, so throughout the event itself, we have team newsletters that kind of highlight the good work that our volunteers are doing. We'll give out specific awards, like pole position awards, or volunteer of the day, to kind of create that extra motivation. But yeah, so other kind of tips and techniques that we use to keep our volunteers energized is, those highlight videos before the event. We give out milestone pin badges for 30, 50, 100 days. And we're really keen at sharing that positive feedback with our race makers as well from our customers to make sure that they feel valued and that they are doing a good job and it is making a difference. One of my favourite days this year was when we got the opportunity to give our volunteers that have been part of the team for a long time the chance to be part of the grid ceremony. So they were the ones carrying out the 75-year anniversary flag. So we gave that opportunity to those that have been part of the team for a while and been consistent with their volunteering. So that was a really good, exciting moment to be part of. But yeah, so throughout the season we do have kind of various touch points to keep them excited about events coming up, and they're always the first to hear about exciting team news. So they get included in part of our team updates to be the first to kind of hear any stories that are going to come out or any updates from our team. So that's quite exciting. But yeah, like I touched upon before, we really do want to kind of build our volunteers into kind of racemaker legends, so the ones that are coming back year after year. So we use kind of a lot of kind of recognition, kind of legacy, kind of marketing through that to do that. So we kind of give public thank yous to our team. We celebrate kind of special milestones. So we had one of our volunteers hit 200 days throughout the season, so we put on a bit of a special event for them. But yeah, and we're always looking to kind of get feedback from our volunteers as well to see what works, what doesn't work, what we can improve on. And then there's also an opportunity to be part of the Racemaker membership club as well. So our volunteers can get additional benefits and discounts, guest tickets throughout the season. But yeah, one of the kind of other favourite moments from throughout this season was our volunteer awards night at the start of the year. So we put on a similar kind of awards night to our staff team, and we gave that opportunity for our volunteers to join to kind of really kind of drive that community and sense of kind of being part of a team for the longer term as well. So that was a fantastic night. So that was kind of another highlight from this year. But yeah, like I say, we're always kind of learning from the feedback from our volunteers, what works for our team, and kind of learning what's worked on social media as well, and kind of driving that kind of content from our race makers themselves. So we're always kind of wanting to kind of listen to our volunteers team and progress what it means to be a race maker as well. So, and we want to be able to get across that in our marketing. So we really do rely upon that feedback and working with the team to be able to do that. But yeah, that's just a bit of an insight into kind of what we do to try and encourage volunteers to come and join our team, and then also stay for the long term as well, because that's what it is. Essentially, it's really important to create that sense of community.
Thank you very much, Amy. I love your program, and yeah, it was really good to hear you talk through some of the initiatives that you run to keep people engaged. An observation that I made is something actually that I see a lot of successful programs do, which is branding the volunteer community, them having their own identity and name. I think it's kind of easy to overlook that actually, but it's by doing that, you can encourage them to make them feel that they're part of something more than just the logo, which is great, but an actual sort of sub community within that as well, that they all feel part of. So well done on nurturing that and making that part of what you do. We've got an opportunity here to ask some questions. So according to my webinar tool that I've got, we're running we've got a couple of minutes left on here. We can run over, but this was the allotted time, so it leaves us enough time just to ask a couple of questions. Tatum, if you're still around, if you haven't had to dash off, could you pop up on the screen, and we're just going to go through some of these questions and just see if you guys can share some insight where appropriate on these. So one of the first questions we've got here is how can I help increase engagement and clicks on opportunity links in our private Facebook groups for volunteers, or just better engagement in general? Has anybody got, Amy or Tatum, have you got a view on that?
I guess they're referring to like a community page that they might have for the volunteers. I think kind of what we kind of use to kind of drive that kind of community kind of spirit on Facebook and generate more engagement is using kind of key members within our volunteer team to start those conversations. So yeah, you might want to kind of look and see if there's anyone within your community that might be interested in kind of helping to kind of push that going forward, and just kind of creating those kind of conversations on the group. But yeah, we're lucky to have a couple of key volunteers that help kind of support that throughout the season.
Yeah. Here's a good one. As soon as the award ceremony popped up on the screen, it did dawn on me. I did think, well, not everybody can do what you've done there, which is spectacular and really, really good. But like, what great free ways can we keep volunteers engaged? As many don't have the budget for an award ceremony. Yeah, have we got any thoughts on what we can offer for that?
Yeah, I think yeah, maybe go out to your community and see what they would like, what benefits they would like to see. Some idea and suggest some ideas there. But yeah, there's kind of ways that don't really kind of cost much, I guess. Like for example, the pin badge initiative, our volunteers absolutely love that. So that kind of helps them or gives them a goal to volunteer more days for your organisation. So it's small things like that that are kind of good for volunteers. They do love those kind of small initiatives or small rewards to kind of take away from their experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably a bit more of like an organizational question here is how do you track someone starting in a volunteer role off the back of a social post? Now, lots of organizations do attribution in various different ways. I gave the example earlier of Emma at Formula E, who uses the sort of back end of Rosterfy to see the sort of source of traffic for where people come through to their landing pages, and that without getting overly technical, they could use a UTM code, which is it's kind of like a way of adding a little extra bit of text at the end of a URL that shows where the origin of that person has actually come from. So they're able to see someone went to their landing page to sign up for volunteer via TikTok, and it shows it in the Rosterfy backend. I don't know if Amy, do you monitor any of that on your side as well?
I guess we track kind of how much engagement we get from posts, but I suppose through our application form we ask how they heard about the opportunity. So you could maybe put a bit more depth into your kind of application questions to find out kind of where they heard the opportunity potentially. But that's kind of what we do. But I guess you could probably go a bit further into that and like Martin suggested, use specific tools to find out that information.
Yeah. Okay. And we've got a question here. Maybe I'll knock this over to you first of all, Tatum, and see if you've got something on this, which is as a small charity supporting those with cancer, we find people often don't want to share on socials. I think that's very fair when we're talking so much about user-generated content. These are generally our volunteers. Any other advice for content? So I guess we're looking at more sort of brand-driven stuff for this. But have you got a take on that, Tatum?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can talk about these things without directly talking about them. I think especially in different lines of work, you can't always mention specifics. So what can you mention? So it could be you're talking about what someone gained out of the experience, or maybe what the difficulties were they overcame, without specifically mentioning people or any specifics about what their work was. I think you can talk around a subject sometimes, and often you can be honest, talk about, we do this great work, but it's really hard to talk about. I think if you're honest on socials, even speaking about what you don't want to talk about or can't talk about, if that makes sense, will really impact people. And I think people can relate to that. So I think you can be honest with these things and share that it's a hard topic to talk about, because you're still sharing on socials without going into those specific details.
Yeah, I've got to admit, and I hope this comes across the right way, but some of the more emotional and impactful content I've seen online is along the lines of where this person clearly works from and in that sector. And yeah, I think that the honesty of it is sometimes really striking and gets to you. But that emotion that I'm feeling now, even just saying that, that's a very powerful thing. And then if used sent in respectfully and in the right way, can really help you build a community behind it as well. So perhaps not being totally afraid of leaning into that a little bit, but doing it in a respectful way is probably where we're going with that. How do you effectively balance being positive, promoting roles, whilst balancing the expectations that it is a long-term commitment and hard work? That's a really good question, because there's like, it's fun, come and be a volunteer, but then there's also like, we need to rely on you. So has anybody got a take on that to answer that question? It's a good question.
Yeah, I suppose when we initially go out to recruit, we kind of set those expectations from the start. So we make it quite clear that we expect kind of 3 days of commitment throughout the British Grand Prix, and it's going to be kind of 8 to 10 hour shifts, for example. And we kind of set those expectations throughout the recruitment process. So right from the application, signing up for the volunteer agreement, and then through to the interview as well. So we do kind of ask those questions and do kind of check what their commitment is going to be, because we do obviously get a lot of people that just want to come and be part of that one-off event. So we kind of focus on their motivation behind applying, and we ask those questions throughout the recruitment as well. So we're looking for people that have kind of got a bigger reason why they want to come and volunteer with us. So whether it's kind of, they've kind of had an interaction with one of our volunteers before and they want to kind of gain that sense of belonging and being part of that team. So yeah, I guess it's quite important to kind of set those expectations from the start and make sure you're recruiting the right people for those roles. Because it can be hard work coming along for 4 days. Most of our volunteers camp as well, so they need to kind of be ready for that experience.
I think where you speak about what platform you choose to speak about it as well makes a difference. For example, if you're speaking about it on TikTok compared to on LinkedIn, if you're speaking about it on LinkedIn, I think people know it's maybe a bit more serious and it's a bit more of a commitment. I also think how you structure a post, for example, it could be a really fun image, but like Amy said, you're setting the expectations in the post. You're making it clear with your language that it is a commitment and there is expectations involved.
I think we've got enough time for just one more question. This question has just popped up, which is, what advice would you give a volunteer management team in a larger organization which is cautious or has gatekeepers of their social media, where volunteers wouldn't be allowed to post? That is an interesting question. I think before I pass it over to either of you, I think my first question would be, why aren't your volunteers allowed to post? I would probably raise that nice and early. Like, what are you afraid of here? I do 100% understand that there is a need to protect the brand. As a previous brand manager myself, the thought of somebody taking my logos and my stuff and running off and go and make a load of content would make me feel a little bit sick. But I don't see it that way anymore, because I know that there is a way of them doing it, which they don't have to use your branding and they don't have to really lean into, your mission and do go here and visit this website and do this. If you just show them doing the activities in a natural and organic way, that is your brand. That is the message that you're putting across. But my first question would be straight to the very top of who makes these strategies and saying, I see where you're coming from, but why aren't we allowing that? But have either of you got a take on that, or do you think I'm being a little bit too bullish there?
No, I 100% agree. For me, if they're not letting you post on social media, it's a massive red flag. You are the best people to speak about the program. I do understand there's restrictions, and usually there's always some sort of restriction, what you can and can't say, what you can and can't do. So I think it'd be good to understand. It might not be that you can't post at all, but it might just be there's a lot of restrictions, and is there ways around that? Maybe it's you can't post video or images, but it doesn't mean you can't write a tweet or write a LinkedIn post about the experience. So yeah, I think finding out if it is an absolute no or if there's just restrictions is important. But yeah, having that conversation, because you're missing a huge trick, a huge opportunity if you're not letting your volunteers post.
Cool. Okay. That's everything for today. I'll just finish up here with how you can get hold of Tatum and Amy online. You can find both of them on LinkedIn. I will say, if you are excited about what Amy showed with the volunteer program at Silverstone, you'd like to be involved. If you're fortunate enough to live around that area as well, there's a lot of events going on all the time. I'm sure Amy would love to hear from you. And Tatum, you guys have got some excellent projects for We Are Social, and I'm sure if there are organizations that are on the call that are looking to expand their reach, put on exciting campaigns and reach and grow their community, I'm sure that you'd love to hear from them. And failing that, just connecting you on LinkedIn anyway and seeing what you're up to, and your next F1 party would be good too.